John Bryan and the Prophecy of the Popes. Introduction. Damascus, 8 p.m. Imad al-Assad had always believed he would spend his last moments on this earth in the company of beautiful women paid for by the hour, or, failing that, with laughing cherub-like grandchildren bouncing on his knee. In both assumptions, he was wrong. Imad al-Assad was to die alone, and in the dark, and in great pain. There's an old Arab saying that the city of Damascus does not sleep. Imad al-Assad knew exactly why. It was the cursed heat, and the cursed food, and the fact you had to make a 10-kilometer journey across the border to Turkey just to get a decent drink. It was 8 in the evening, and his small hotel room felt like a Turkish sauna, and Imad was sick of the stench of his own sweat. There were no windows, so he sat with the ceiling lights off to try and keep the heat down to a bearable temperature. Here in the world's oldest city, air conditioning units were as rare as straight roads, and overhead fans were considered an unnecessary luxury. The market traders on the streets below had long since packed their wares. Very soon a muezzin would sound the adhan, the call to prayer, which reminded the faithful to give thanks for Allah's presence, guidance, mercy, and forgiveness. Imad was perched on an uncomfortable wooden stool with his head hunched over a laptop monitor. The room was dark, and he used the yellow-white glow from the screen to see. Imad's fingers stabbed at the laptop's keyboards as though he was gouging out the eyes of the man at the other end. Every few minutes he paused to wipe away a film of sweat from his forehead. He had been in Damascus for exactly 5 weeks and 3 days. Long enough to hate the place, but not long enough to want to leave. Shortly after the failed robbery in Kent, England, he had flown from Heathrow to Dubai and then on to Jordan before finally boarding an Arabia air flight to Syria. Travelling under several identities and often in disguise, he had arrived at the incongruously named Saladin Palace Hotel in Damascus's Old Town, where a room was already waiting. The 3-story bed and breakfast was set away from the main Souk al-Saraja road and was just one of a dozen or so equally bland, equally uninviting guest houses found in the Old Town area. Unlike the rest of the ancient city, which, in the name of economic expediency, had gladly opened its arms to embrace tourism, transactions here were handled on a strict cash-only basis, and long-term patronage was not encouraged. Like many businesses in the city, the Saladin Palace was controlled by militiamen loyal to the Islamic Jihad, and in particular the Islamic militant group Hamas. As such, the hotel was considered a safe haven for those willing to fight and die in the name of Allah. This fact, however, was little consolation to Imad al-Assad as he chewed on his bottom lip and read the words flashing up on his screen. The encrypted online conversation used the ICQ chat program, which meant it was in real time, and Imad could see each letter as it was being typed at the other end. Imad's brow furrowed into a scowl as the meaning behind the words slowly hit home. He was still reading, hunched over his PC, when the wooden door handle to his room turned slowly. The door shifted slightly as a plastic card was inserted between the lock and the frame. The first Imad knew of the intruder was when he felt the gun muzzle pressed gently to the back of his head. He didn't have time to turn. His hands were still frozen over the keyboards, eyes wide with surprise when a silenced pistol whispered behind him. The first of the 3 bullets tore through the base of his neck, shattering his voice box before he could cry out and transforming the monitor into an abstract canvas of blood and shattered bone. The bullet that followed immediately after was aimed slightly higher. Imad's ears rang as the lead alloy projectile sped past his tympanic membrane and exploded outward from beneath his chin. The third shot, again to the back of the head, was just a formality. Imad's hands balled into fists and then relaxed as the gaping bloody mess that remained of his head slumped to his chest. His limp body began sliding off the chair like a broken rag doll, but was steadied by the back of the gloved hand still holding the smoking pistol. Almost tenderly, his killer eased the dead man forward until his forehead rested on the tabletop. The assassin didn't wait to check his victim's vitals. There was no need. Instead, he turned his attention to the laptop, which was still switched on. Tucking the gun into the back of his trousers, he inserted a cigarette-sized hard drive into a USB port at the back of the computer. The upload took over a minute. Satisfied that he'd retrieved the data that was so vital to the mission, the killer calmly turned off the computer and backed out of the room. Within minutes, he had sprinted down the 3 floors to the hotel reception. Once outside, he entered the passenger side of a waiting black sedan. The 2 grim-faced men already inside the car did not speak. Instead, the driver checked the rear-view mirror. Satisfied that they were not being followed, he flicked what remained of his cigarette out of the car window, pulled off the curb and headed for the airport.